Petyr Baelish leaned against the embroidered cushions of his litter as it crawled through King's Landing's cramped lanes, absorbing the oil-soaked smell of torches and river rot. The clatter of portcullis chains echoed ahead, while vendors hawked eel pies and boiled crabs beneath balconies draped in dusty banners. In the gloom he traced, with a fingertip, the silver mockingbird pin at his breast, and considered how effortlessly chaos could be coaxed into order, provided the hand guiding it never revealed itself. Tonight, the Iron Throne's ruling family feasted in Maegor's holdfast, toasting Joffrey's name day with sugared oranges and kegs of arbor gold. Petyr, pointedly absent, instead followed the path that power truly took. Through whispers passed between servants, through favors owed in dark stairwells, through the flaring curiosity of a certain ambitious rose from Highgarden. Marriage, he thought, was merely the formal tithe one paid to destiny. If he selected the proper partner, the rest of Westeros would sign the writs without realizing whose ink sealed them. The litter stopped outside a narrow marble townhouse on the Street of Silk, facade veiled by purple evening glories. 2 Braavosi guards in quilted mantles greeted him with curt bows. Inside, candelabra spat resinous smoke over polished tiles. In the atrium, scent of myrrh drifted from low braziers, while soft fingers peeled away his sable cloak. Petyr's eyes, as calm as pond ice, searched for the soft rustle of silks he expected. Margaery Tyrell emerged from the shadows beneath the colonnade, her gown a fall of deep jade tight at the waist, and blooming at the hips like an evergreen rose. Moonstones glittered at her throat. Where many ladies wore innocence as armor, Margaery carried calculation in dimples, and a smile bright enough to dazzle the realm. She offered no curtsy, only a delicate tilt of the head, as though greeting a co-conspirator rather than a lord. "I feared you would remain with the Lannisters this evening," she said, soft voice cloaked in courtesy. "A seat at their table is worth more than a meeting beside a Braavosi brazier." Petyr's grin curved like a dagger pulled half from its sheath. "A seat at their table is a compliment. A seat at my table is an opportunity. I suspected you would prefer the latter." Then they walked to a lacquered map table whose surface charted the 7 kingdoms in mother of pearl. Margaery brushed a fingertip across the reach, tracing rose-etched borders until her nail touched the painted walls of the capital. "My family desires security," she said. "The Queen Regent provides promises, yet promises may be bent when iron meets need. You offer other assurances. Promises grow old." "Secrets never age," Petyr replied. "Give me a secret, and I'll give you a kingdom." She studied him. Candles flickered in her hazel eyes, catching cunning beneath their warmth. "Tell me which secret might purchase safety for my brothers, or make a queen of someone not yet betrothed." "In time," Petyr murmured. "We shall trade secrets as lovers trade sighs. But first, tell me, would you rather rule from beside a boy king's bed or share a throne with a man who worships every breath you draw?" Margaery's laugh chimed like a wind bell. "Am I to believe you capable of worship, Lord Baelish?" "Only of elevating brilliance," he said. "Yours could blind the realm." At Highgarden, Lady Olenna reclined among silvery olive branches, her needles clicking through pale wool, while a hush of bees danced over lemon blossoms. She listened as Margaery relayed, in cautious detail, the offer Littlefinger posed. Olenna's wrinkled mouth tightened, not in disapproval, but in appraisal. "A spider mating a rose," the old woman muttered. "He spins, you bloom. Does he think the staggling queen will sit idle while a hedge knight's son sets thrones?" Margaery poured tea, steady-handed. "Littlefinger is no knight. He's a gate kept ajar. Walk through, and you find corridors no Lannister blade can reach. And now," Olenna's eyes gleamed, "and if the gate swings shut behind us, then I will have already picked the lock," her granddaughter said. Small council chambers reeked of parchment dust and cold iron when Petyr returned to King's Landing. He listened while Lord Tywin dictated levies, while Pycelle droned of harvest tithes, and while Cersei's gaze burned venom at every Tyrell mention. Beneath the table, Petyr's boot nudged a rolled parchment. A marriage contract drafted in ghostwriting ink that would appear only when kissed by lemon juice fire. He hummed as Varys watched, bald head tilting like an owl's. That night, he met the spider in the Red Keep's forgotten towers. Rain hissed on moss-slick stone. Varys' silk slippers made no sound. A daring match, Varys whispered. The rose among those who guard the heir. The heir's guards are blind, Petyr replied. Blind men follow the scent of roses, not the cut of thorns. And you think yourself immune to their pricks? I think myself the gardener, Petyr said. Weeks unfurled like banners beneath a rising storm. In sepia dawns, riders sped between Highgarden and the capital, bearing sealed letters scented by apple blossom wax. Petyr cultivated debts in brothels, purchased oaths in sailors' taverns, promised coin to kettleblacks and silk to laundresses. With each favor he accumulated threads, and with each thread he wove a tapestry none but he could see. Margaery returned to court beneath the pretext of assisting Queen Cersei in charitable duties. She distributed bread to orphans before the great Septi. Her smile, a benediction. Septons praised her piety. Beggars praised her generosity. The small folk began whispering that the gods themselves sent the rose to soften a city hardened by lion claws. Cersei watched from balconies, jaw tight. She relied on the Tyrell alliance yet despised any bloom that rivaled her own. When she confided to Jaime that Margaery's charities undermined the crown's splendor, Jaime smirked and advised patience. But Cersei's patience was smoke in a gale. Meanwhile, Joffrey preened amid courtiers, oblivious. His infatuation with crossbows occupied thoughts more than betrothal vows. Petyr ensured the boy received exotic bolts, quarrels tipped with star steel, from a secret admirer. The king's attention drifted further from Margaery, creating the very void Petyr required. Under a shrouded moon the Sept of Baelor stood dark, save a single lantern at the altar. 2 Septons and a silent sister bore witness. The words were spoken in murmurs, binding Lady Margaery Tyrell to Lord Petyr Baelish, titles set aside, fortunes entwined. A cloak of black velvet lay upon her shoulders, embroidered not with a mockingbird, but with a hybrid sigil, a silver bird cradled by a green rose. No musicians played, no banners unfurled. Their hands met above a flame as thin as a dying star. When it guttered out, Petyr's smile returned. Ravenous, triumphant. We are wed in eyes unseen, he whispered. Tomorrow, the realm shall open its own. Margaery held his gaze. Then let them stare until their sight fails. Dawn after the secret wedding broke red as split pomegranates. Whispers traveled quicker than ravens. The rose was vanished from her chambers. Littlefinger's litter rolled toward the river mouth. Cersei's fury cracked across the castle like a whip. She sent gold cloaks to seal the gates. Too late. Petyr sailed aboard the Merry Gull, bound upriver to Gulltown where the Vale's slender passes offered refuge. Yet Petyr had no intention of hiding. At dusk, he disembarked at a modest fishing village, mounted a fresh palfrey, and rode south. Along the road companies of sellswords awaited, contracts inked under aliases. Through hillside cloisters, he met hedgelords impoverished by war, promising them new titles in exchange for signatures on a parchment none might read. That parchment now bore 3 seals: Baelish, Tyrell, and newly affixed Tully, a courtesy purchased with quiet threats aimed at the gullible blackfish. In Margaery's absence, King's Landing seethed. The Queen Regent accused the Tyrells of treason. Olenna returned with Maester Gorman, calm as winter apples, denying knowledge of any elopement. But secret letters had wings. Soon broadsheets appeared in Flea Bottom proclaiming a marriage, sanctioned by the Seven, and blessed by the small folks' love. Street poets sang of a rose who chose cleverness over cruelty, a mockingbird who freed her from lion claws. Crowds gathered along the Street of Sisters, chanting Margaery's name. Cersei dispatched the gold cloaks to disperse them, yet each baton swing fed resentment. Small folk began calling her the Queen of Ashes, and the epithet stuck like burrs in silk. Tywin Lannister convened the small council with iron calm. He would not abide disorder, but he needed rich grain to sustain the city. Summoning Lady Olenna, he hinted that storms might swallow both lion and rose if tempests spread. Olenna, knitting, returned a ghost of a smile. "Our bloom grows sweeter in storms," she said. "Be certain your lions can still smell it when the rains end." North of the Blackwater, Petyr and Margaery established court in Harrenhal's half-restored West Tower. The castle's blackened stones, once melted by Aegon's dragons, now gleamed after rains. Petyr oversaw masons reinforcing collapsed spans. Margaery transformed weed-choked courtyards into gardens, bursting with frost lilies and bloodroot. Each dawn saw banners stitched with the new sigil fluttering against charcoal walls. Silver bird amid green petals, a promise of rebirth. Petyr convened lords dispossessed by Lannister policy. The Sarsfields, the Vances, even some Frey cousins resentful of Walder's scorn. Over spiced wine he offered debt relief, marriages, titles, positions at a royal court. Yet to exist. They left Harrenhal swearing fealty not merely to Baelish, but to Lady Margaery, whose laughter welcomed each ragged oath as though it crowned them kings already. Margaery wrote to Sansa Stark, still captive in the capital, offering sanctuary and sisterhood. The girl's reply arrived in trembling script, fear laced with fragile hope. Petyr sealed it within his sleeve. He would need the North eventually. A Stark bride would gild any claim. All in proper sequence. Chaos deepened its roots. In King's Landing the faith militant murmured revival, intrigued by rumors that the new Rosebird banner vowed to restore tithes to the sept. Dowager nobles, disillusioned with Cersei, quietly pledged dowries to Petyr's cause. Even salty Dornish envoys, slighted by lion arrogance, reached out through ciphered parchments offering Sandsteed cavalry. Varys approached Cersei in the dark of Maggie's prophecy-haunted chambers. "We risk a war of pamphlets, not swords," he warned. "If the people believe the Rosebird is their champion, no wall of gold will hold them." Cersei dismissed him, but her nights soon filled with the echo of chanting outside the Red Keep. Rose and bird, blossom and word. King Joffrey ordered his crossbowmen to fire into the crowds. On the third day, a bread riot erupted. Bakers' stalls burned. The royal septon was pelted with dung. Rumors claimed Littlefinger's whisperers paid the rabble, yet others spoke of true hunger, of taxes risen to fund Lannister wars. Truth mattered little. Perception crowned kings as surely as swords. In Braavos, a veiled banker of the Iron Bank signed Petyr's promissory notes. Coin flowed west, filling coffers at Gulltown and White Harbor. With silver, he hired scribes to copy scurrilous tracts, lampooning Tywin's heavy hand, praising Margaery's charity. These reached every port faster than ravens, tucked within bolts of Myrish lace and cod barrels. Within Harrenhal's draughty solar, Margaery pored over petitions from small folk, granting relief from taxes in ravaged riverlands. She invited wounded veterans to dine at her high table, listened to their tales, promised farmland. Word of these banquets spread. Bards compared her to Nymeria and Queen Alysanne combined. Petyr watched, admiring how she wielded empathy as deftly as he wielded secrets. One icy dusk he approached her beneath a trellis heavy with frost. Jewels of light danced on her lashes. "You win hearts with smiles," he said. "I shall win minds with fear. Both shall bow." Margaery answered without turning. "Win too many minds with fear, and they forget the smile that follows. Balance, my lord." "It is not balance I crave," he replied. "It is inevitability. But inevitability built on fear alone crumbles when fear fades." She turned now, eyes luminous. "Let them love me. Let them respect you. Between us, they will never know which binds tighter." Petyr's breath clouded in cold air, though a warmth kindled in his chest, alien and inconvenient. He kissed her glove. "As you command, my queen yet unsung." Summer's end brought ravens from Storm's End. Garland Tyrell, having seized the castle by cunning parley, requested audience. Petyr invited him to Harrenhal. There, amid echoes of ancient dragonfire, Garland knelt and offered sworn blades of the Reach in exchange for his sister's safety and their family's continued influence. Petyr lifted him, calling the Reach Garden of the Realm, promising its petals would flourish. He then dispatched swift riders north to White Harbor, bearing letters forged with Sansa Stark's hand courtesy, of an accomplished calligrapher from Lys. The letters invited Petyr to discuss alliances of mutual prosperity. Lord Wyman Manderley, grieving sons lost on distant seas, responded favorably, enticed by whispers of restored northern autonomy. Step by step, Petyr bound lords as a puppeteer, not strings. Yet he knew strings could snap, should a lion roar too loudly. Thus he crafted a snare within the snare. A ledger discovered, conveniently, within the Iron Bank's vault detailed Lannister debts triple those publicly acknowledged. Copies found their way to Old Town, Sunspear, and, crucially, to certain masterminds within the capital's own mint. Markets trembled, gold dragons devalued overnight, and small folk blamed Cersei's misrule. Winter solstice arrived. Snow dusted the blackened towers of Harrenhal. Petyr hosted a feast for 20 minor lords displaced by war. Trout, duck glazed with honey, spiced pears. Minstrels sang of Aegon's conquest rewritten. How a clever bird and a steadfast rose soothed dragons into sleeping. Margaery danced with Petyr beneath banners of soft silver thread. Each turn of her skirt felt to the watching guests an augury of change. Outside, across a frozen courtyard, Ser Dantos Hollard trembled beside a brazier, intoxicated. Petyr beckoned. A whispered promise of wine enough to float a ship convinced Dantos to slip a jeweled hairnet into the royal court, come spring. A net strung with black amethysts carrying far deadlier venom than stone. Spring winds tasted of churned river silt and revolution. In King's Landing the gold cloaks muttered of unpaid stipends. Many had families fed by Margaery's earlier largesse. One night, a detachment deserted, marching north to Harrenhal to swear service. The precedent spread. When coin fails, loyalty drifts toward bread. Cersei arranged Joffrey's wedding to Margaery's cousin Eleanor, but Septons balked at annulling the absent betrothal. Rose petals still legal until proven otherwise. Tywin suggested another match with the Freys. Old Walder had daughters of plenty. But the small folk mocked the idea, chanting, "A Frey for a Frey's worth." Rumor claimed Littlefinger corresponded with Dorne, promising to seat Princess Arianne beside him as Mistress of Laws in exchange for Sunspear's support. Another rumor spoke of ships in Bravos ferrying cell sails wearing half-rose, half-bird sigils. Varys wove these reports into warnings, yet for each he traced, 2 more emerged. Petyr stood upon Harrenhal's highest tower one dusk, surveying the riverlands bathed in copper sun. Margaery joined him, cloak whipped by wind. Below, men drilled with spears tipped by rose-shaped guards. A symbolic flourish she insisted upon. "We have built foundation," she said. "But a throne stands in the capital, not in burned halls. How do we claim it without spattering the streets red?" Petyr's eyes glittered. "Wars are loud confessions of failure. We shall not fail. The king will fall by his own pulse. Poison beats sword." Margaery's breath caught. "Poison is indiscriminate." "Not this poison," he assured. "It shall bloom precisely." She studied him, counting cost against mercy. "There are poisons made of ink as well as venom. Which do you wield?" "Both," he said. "But ink writes the eulogy." The royal wedding approached. Petyr planned each beat. A purple gem crushed into Joffrey's wine. Dantos delivering the hairnet. Chaos erupting. Baelish men among the Kingsguard smoothing panic toward blame upon Tyrion Lannister. But one change threaded through the tapestry unseen. Margaery insisted no child must die by poison's drift. Petyr adjusted dosage, ensuring death lingered just long enough for spectacle, yet spared heartbreak of innocence at the high table. In candlelit chambers he rehearsed speeches of condolence, drafted letters proclaiming shock and dismay, each carefully time-stamped to place him leagues away at the moment of tragedy. The day before the wedding, snowmelt flooded the Blackwater. Streets clogged with beggars awaiting free bread, promised by a crown, suddenly bereft of coin. Petyr's agents fanned through the throng, handing out sweet buns stamped with rosebird seals. Children tasted honey and asked who gifted it. Voices answered, "The true queen who feeds us." Inside Maegor's holdfast, Cersei drank arbor red to calm nerves. Visiting Septon Reynard read portents of betrayal in ancient scrolls. Jaime, frustrated, confessed to his brother Tyrion that he smelled smoke in every corridor, yet saw no flames. Tyrion mused that sometimes fire lives in words, not embers. That night ravens flew from Harrenhal bearing sealed parchment, invitations to lords great and small to attend a great council following unexpected vacancy upon the throne. Signatures awaited. Still blank lines heralded which houses would answer. Margaery sat before a hearth's low embers, eyes reflecting gold. Petyr kneeled, presenting a silver ring forged from two thin bands twisted. "Tomorrow ends one reign," he said. "Let the next begin in certainty." She accepted the ring, sliding it beside her wedding band. "If certainty means blood, ensure it is swift." "It shall be elegant," he murmured. They touched foreheads. For a heartbeat, the web vanished, leaving only two conspirators bound by ambition, and something that felt suspiciously like devotion. Morning bells rang across King's Landing. Petyr's litter approached the Dragon Gate as if by coincidence, dust cloaking its panels. Inside, he reviewed final contingencies. Should Joffrey survive the poison, a disguised archer perched upon the Sept's rooftop would finish the task. Should the archer fail, a riot within the Street of Flower would lure the king forth under false security, where a cart of wildfire kegs waited to detonate. But he trusted the certain taste of the Strangler. Inside the Sept, gold sunlight slanted over tapestries as Joffrey Baratheon took his vows. Margaery's cousin Eleanor glowed in ivory lace, yet her eyes sought only stability, not passion. Petyr's gaze drifted over Tywin, over Cersei, over Tyrion fidgeting with his goblet. Each player danced to notes he composed. At the feast, vintners poured deep crimson. When the king raised his cup, time slowed. Petyr counted pulses. 1, 2, 3. A scream shattered harmony. Wine splattered. Joffrey's throat constricted, turning to raw purple. He clawed at his collar, eyes bulging. Cersei shrieked. Tyrion froze. Sansa watched as if spirit untethered. Amid the chaos, Petyr slipped behind a brocade curtain, unseen. Joffrey's body convulsed, toppled, and lay still beside a spilled pie. Silence drowned the hall. Only the crackle of torches dared speak. Petyr emerged minutes later, face carved from grief. He knelt beside the corpse, pressed 2 fingers to the boy's neck, and shook his head sadly. "The king is dead," he pronounced, voice trembling just enough. "Long live the king." Eyes turned to Tommen, wide-eyed and trembling. Cersei clutched him, hair wild. Tywin's jaw clenched, calculations blazed behind his stare. Yet murmurs already spread. Some claimed they saw Tyrion hand Joffrey the cup. Others swore it was the Queen Regent herself using perfume to mask poison. Conjecture clashed like crows over carrion. Petyr stepped back, letting the confusion ferment. Soon, he knew, the tide would demand a savior. By dusk, Tyrion sat in a cell. Cersei raved. Tywin summoned ravens to every corner of the realm demanding calm. And amid the candle smoke of the Tower of the Hand, Varys found a note upon his pillow. A rose petal kissed with a mockingbird feather, and 3 words, "Hearts in balance." Varys burned the petal, but the scent lingered. He understood. The game had reshaped itself. One piece removed, another ascended. He wondered which next would fall. Petyr and Margaery met again in Harrenhal's Godswood. She wore traveling leathers, hair coiled in braids. He relayed the success, the uncertain aftermath, the imprisonment of Tyrion, the tension within the city. Through it all, she listened. Expression unreadable. "You promised no war," she said finally. "None yet. Will Tommen bend to your guidance? Children bend beneath sweets. I have sweets aplenty. But Cersei will wield him. She will try." Petyr offered his arm. "Walk with me." They paced beneath skeletal weirwood branches. "We must present ourselves not as usurpers, but as guardians," he said. "We ride to King's Landing openly, offering counsel in tragedy. The small folk already chant your name. With the Tyrell host as escort, no blade will draw. And the Lannisters? Tywin needs allies to quell dissent." He will cling to the reach and the veil rather than risk fractured rule. He may sneer, but he will swallow. Margaery paused beside a frozen pond, snowflakes settling upon her lashes. This path leads to a throne, yet not for us. Tommen wears the crown. For now, Petyr murmured. A regent holds the true power. Her gaze flicked to his. A regent's wife may hold even more. He inclined his head. Together, then, we craft a reign where swords gather dust, where grain flows, where songs praise wisdom, and when swords are drawn regardless. Petyr's smile returned. Soft as falling ash. Then wisdom will have taught us which throats to open before they speak. Southward they rode with banners streaming, rosebird sigils flanked by golden lilies and mockingbird pennons. Garland led vanguards of Reach cavalry. Remnants of Riverlord levies filled the columns. Along each village they passed. Small folk knelt, offering crusts, flowers, cheers. Children chased the horses, waving ribbons. Inside her carriage Margaery drafted decrees of tax relief and rebuilding grants. Petyr penned letters to Dornish and Ironborn both, inviting envoys to a peace summit once order restored. He placed blank parchments atop each finished script, for new contingencies always sprouted. At the Trident's muddy banks they paused. Petyr dismounted, staring at waters once reddened by Rhaegar's blood. History, he mused, bent for those who nudged its course at fords and feasts both. He intended never to stain his boots with battle, yet still the river would carry away the bodies of his enemies. They made camp 2 days' ride from the capital. Night winds rattled pennons. Distant lanterns of scouting parties winked. Petyr summoned his captains, instructing them to hold position until dawn. Privately he received a raven. Tyrion had demanded trial by combat. Cersei insisted upon Ser Gregor as champion. The MPS doom, seemingly sealed, would ignite further unrest. Petyr presented the message to Margaery. If Tyrion dies, the small folk may revolt anew. She said, "He's no hero to them, but injustice stinks. And if he lives, Tywin's pride shatters?" Petyr replied, "Either path suits us." She considered. Injustice breeds unpredictability. Free the dwarf. Petyr raised a brow. Publicly, quietly, let him vanish. They will search, blame, fume. All while we step in as mediators. He nodded once. It shall be done. That night, cloaked riders left camp, carrying purses heavy with coin and directions to a hidden postern gate. Dawn painted the sky peach as Petyr's host approached King's Landing. Trumpets within the city walls answered with reluctant notes. On the ramparts gold cloaks watched, uncertain, but at their rear commoners waved cloth strips of green and silver, cheering before fear could root. Cersei, pale and drawn, received them in the throne room. Tommen perched on the iron throne, feet dangling. Tywin stood like a carved lion, assessing. Petyr bowed with practiced grief. "Your graces, allow us to serve in this hour of mourning. My lady wife brings Reach grain and gentle counsel." Margaery stepped forward, cloak glistening like dew. She knelt before Tommen. "Your Majesty, I weep for your brother. Let me ease your burden. Let the realm heal." She reached up, taking his small hand. The boy blushed, glancing at his grandfather. Cersei's eyes narrowed. "The realm does not require strangers to heal it." Petyr's tone oiled the air. "We are no strangers, your grace. I serve the crown as master of coin, and Lady Margaery as betrothed once promised to the late king. Our loyalty remains." Tywin's voice emerged low. "Loyalty must be demonstrated." Petyr inclined his head. "Name your demonstration." Tywin's gaze lingered on banners beyond the gate. "Disband your host. Enter the city with personal guard only." Petyr smiled. "Of course. We seek peace, not pressure." He signaled. Horns blared. The army pitched camp outside the walls. Only a slim retinue accompanied Petyr and Margaery through the mud gate. Small folk showered them with rose petals. Within Red Keep corridors, Varys glided forth. "Lord Baelish," he purred, "King Tommen's counsel awaits your wisdom." His eyes flicked to Margaery. "And the realm awaits hers." Petyr offered his arm to his wife. Together they ascended the tower steps. Each footfall rang like a minuscule bell, marking the slow, inevitable passing of an old Ur. Small council convened 2 hours before sunset. Pycelle shuffled parchments of deficit. Tywin pressed signet to edicts of conscription. Cersei scowled behind goblet. Petyr produced ledgers showing how Harrenhal's revenues exceeded expectations. How reach grain convoys already near the capital would have bread prices within a fortnight. He suggested appointing Sir Garland as commander of city granaries to ensure faithful distribution. Tywin's fingers drummed, but he agreed. Bread calmed revolt. Petyr next proposed a reconstruction fund, financed by loans from the Iron Bank, guaranteed by shipments of Dornish wine and Vale silver. Cersei balked. Tywin weighed the risk, but knew refusal invited economic collapse. He yielded. With each concession, the council ceded invisible ground. Petyr granted them credit for decisions he orchestrated, letting them believe themselves powerful, while cords slid round their throats. Night blossomed over the city. Lantern light rippled across the black water. In the Queen's ballroom, Margaery hosted a vigil for Joffrey. Hundreds of candles floated in shallow copper basins, each representing a soul who perished in war. Small folk mingled with nobles, sharing spiced cider and tearful stories. For every widow comforted, a memory etched itself in loyalty's ledger. Petyr observed from a balcony. Varys joined him, plump hands folded. "You wove a tapestry quite resplendent," the spider said. Petyr's voice was a hush. "A tapestry is appreciated most when it covers a crack." Varys nodded toward the crowd. "Cracks remain." "They always will," Petyr replied. "My wife waters the mortar. And what of the wall when the flowers outshine its bricks?" Petyr's smile held no warmth. "Then bricks shall envy blossoms, and crumble themselves to soil." A raven arrived from Casterly Rock. A summons for Tywin, citing urgent matters of gold and iron. The hand hesitated, wary of abandoning the capital, yet duty gnawed. Petyr offered reassurance that King's Landing remained secure under combined guardianship of Crown and Council. After a day's deliberation, Tywin departed with 1,000 men. In his wake, Cersei found herself isolated amid corridors, now echoing with Reach accents and mockingbird laughter. Petyr convened a special council, naming Margaery Queen Regent's advisor for public welfare, granting her authority over orphanages, alms, and city watch recruitment. Gold cloaks hailed their new benefactor. Bread prices fell. Dock workers found wages paid on time. Praise filled taverns like summer flies. News seeped that Tyrion Lannister had escaped custody, guards slain by unknown blades. Cersei raged. Petyr expressed solemn dismay. Margaery called for prayers. In secret, Petyr sent riders south, where a ship awaited the imp, poised to ferry him across the narrow sea, a bargaining piece for future need. With Tyrion gone and Tywin absent, Cersei's grip loosened. She clashed with Grand Maester Pycelle over expenditures, with Lord Hallyne over wildfire stores, with Garland Tyrell over grain quotas. Each conflict Petyr mediated, appearing reasonable, mediating to Margaery's advantage. Garland suggested petitioning the High Septon to wed his sister to King Tommen, uniting Rose and Lyon. Cersei protested that Tommen was too young, yet precedent favored child betrothals. Petyr feigned neutrality, but his subtle nod signaled acceptance. The High Septon, noting public fervor for Margaery, blessed the match in principle. Candles lit across the city in celebration. Children wore rosebud pins on laces. Tommen, shy yet smitten, practiced signatures intertwining Lyon and Rose. In Harrenhal, blacksmiths hammered new coin dies. One face bore the boy king's lion crown, the other the rosebud of the regent couple. Coins would circulate within months, each exchange a whisper that power no longer belonged solely to Lannisters. Petyr visited the dungeons beneath the Red Keep, where ledger books of past masters of coin moldered. He selected pages showing Cersei's siphoning of city funds to personal debts, planting them where Pycelle would snoop. Days later, the maester produced them before the small council. Cersei screamed forgery. Pycelle mumbled ballads of ink dating. Pettyr merely sighed. Sad, sympathetic. The council voted to strip Cersei of purse authority, assigning oversight to a joint office of coin and welfare. Baelish and Margaery. Summer's heat settled heavy. Rats gnawed at barley stores. Fleas carried fevers. Yet the city persisted, anger turning to uneasy hope. Margaery toured fish markets, tasting stews. Pettyr met with Braavosi factors in candlelit cells carved into rockstone cliffs. Agreements emerged for sewer renovations, for harbor dredging, for a new lighthouse crowned by a rosebird vane. At dusk, they shared chambers high in Maegor's keep. Margaery, hair unbraided, traced maps upon their coverlet. When Tommen matures, will we relinquish our hold? Pettyr brushed her cheek. We shall guide him, as all parents guide children. We are not his parents. In the realm's eyes, we shall be. She contemplated. I never sought to usurp a child. And you have not, he said. You nurture him. When he grows, he shall trust only us. Eventually he will seek your counsel in marriage, in war, in life. We shall be the realm's steady pulse. And if others challenge, let them. Sheams outlast swords. We have set foundations in parchment, in grain, in hearts. They might cut our throats, but by then the realm will bleed itself to starve them. Then, she exhaled, half comforted, half chilled. Promise me blood will not flood the streets. Pettyr kissed her fingers. I promise to build rivers elsewhere for it to fill. In the Vale, young Lord Robin Arryn rode to practice at the lists, cheered by knights paid from Baelish coin. Letters from Harrenhal coaxed him to petition the crown for recognition of Pettyr's marriage as alliance beneficial to the Vale. Robin complied, eager to please his beloved Lord Protector. The Lords Declarant, weary of strife, signed as well. Thus 3 kingdoms, the Reach, the Vale, and half the Riverlands, stood in silent support of the Rosebird Regency. Dorne awaited only proof of stability. The North watched, uncertain, their Stark girl still caged in the Red Keep yet walking freer corridors than before. Escorted by Olenna's maids, the day came when Tywin returned. He found the small council chambers, scrubbed, draped in banners interweaving lion, rose, and bird. Breadlines shortened, gold cloaks wore gleaming gorgets stamped with combined sigil. Varys greeted the hand with a murmured, "The city thrives, my lord." Tywin questioned finances. Pettyr produced balanced ledgers. He questioned discipline. Sir Garland delivered reports of crime drops. He questioned loyalty. The High Septon extolled Margaery's virtue. Each answer stifled ire until only embers remained. For the first time, Tywin Lannister felt ancient. That evening he summoned Pettyr to his solar. Firelight etched hollows in the old lion's cheeks. You maneuvered entire armies without unsheathing a blade. Pettyr inclined his head. Blades dull. Incentives endure. Tywin studied him. You aim for more than coin. I aim for a realm that flourishes. When it flourishes, my coin multiplies. And should it falter? Pettyr's smile was an autumn leaf. Then I shall plant anew elsewhere. Tywin clenched a goblet. You wed the Tyrell girl to climb higher. I wed her because none else understood heights as I did. Silence stretched. Finally Tywin said, "Serve the realm. Serve Tommen, and I shall not hinder you." Pettyr bowed. My life's purpose. Yet as he left, Tywin's gaze lingered on an unfurled map where a rosebird standard marked King's Landing. The lion wondered if he had caged the mockingbird or opened the doors of his den to it. Months rolled. Trial dates, feast days, harvest festivals colored the calendar. Pettyr orchestrated Tommen and Margaery's public moments. The boy presenting her with a rosebud at a tourney, she teaching him to greet orphan children. The realm sighed at the sweetness. Quietly, Pettyr directed scribes to pen educational treatises for Tommen emphasizing prudent delegation, coin management, and trust in wise counselors. The boy learned to seek Lord Baelish's guidance on every decree. Cersei drifted through gardens, surrounded by guards yet isolated. Wine stained her lips. Prophecy haunted her nights. Rumors abounded that she penned desperate letters to Euron Greyjoy, to Qyburn, to any who might sow thunder in the calm. Pettyr paid spies well to intercept each letter and replace it with kinder forgeries, steering her into trivial pursuits, rebuilding the royal menagerie, commissioning statues of her father, busy work that soaked coin and attention. In Braavos, the Iron Bank signed fresh loans after Pettyr guaranteed collateral in new trade routes. In Dorne, Prince Doran sent his eldest son to foster at court under Baelish tutelage. In the north, Manderlys reopened White Harbor's shipyards with coin forwarded through Pettyr's gulls, returning fleets heavy with lumber and fur to southern markets. Each success bound the Rosebird crest deeper into merchant scales and small folk memory. Songs emerged of the Queen of Candles and the Lord of Whispers, sung by minstrels from Old Town to the Wall. Children played at politics, assigning roles. Some a lion roaring, others a bird whispering, always a rose who healed the wounded. 5 years passed. Tommen approached manhood guided by regents who never relinquished reins, yet disguised control beneath familial affection. When he took Queensguard oaths of justice, he quoted passages Margaery wrote. When he reviewed tax ledgers, he referenced formulae Pettyr devised. The kingdom prospered. Roads paved, taverns subdued, septs repaired. Yet beneath prosperity lay a web of favors leading back to Baelish. One tug, and a dozen lords would kneel. Another, and coin would vanish from hostile treasuries. In their privy chambers, Margaery sometimes pondered whether the peace they forged would outlive them. Pettyr assured her it would, that they had replaced war with want, and as long as the realm desired bread and spectacle, they remained its bakers and playwrights. Once, on a balcony overlooking the bustling Blackwater harbor, Margaery asked, "Have we truly seized the throne?" Pettyr drew her against him, gaze sweeping across ships bearing the Rosebird pennant alongside the royal lion. "Look below. Every sail, every coin, every heart beats to a rhythm we composed. Thrones are not iron, my love. They are stories, and we are their authors." She rested her head on his shoulder, listening to gulls cry over masts. In their caw she heard not conquest but continuity, the relentless turning of schemes that birthed nations and buried kings, whispered by a mockingbird in love with a rose who learned to wield thorns as deftly as petals. And so the 7 kingdoms slept beneath a quilt sewn of silken plots, blissfully unaware that their peaceful dreams were guarded not by swords nor crowns, but by the entwined ambitions of a spider and a flower, ever blooming, ever watching, ever writing the next chapter before the ink of the last had dried. K. A humid dusk deepened over King's Landing, and torch smoke drifted in languid whorls along the serpentine alleys below the Red Keep. Pettyr Baelish stood at a window of the Tower of the Hand, hands clasped behind him, listening to the faraway hammering of shipwrights in the royal shipyards. Each clang of iron on iron rang through the summer air like a precise chime in a clockwork. He alone understood. He had spent the day poring over revised tariffs from Gulltown and the grain manifests of Golden Grove, yet his mind lingered on less certain matters. Whispers of sellswords rallying beneath a smoky kraken banner in the sunset sea. A banner Cersei's forged letters had once begged for help, but that might now answer to another power entirely. Those forged pleas had served their purpose, drawing Cersei into a tangle of costly distractions. But warships, once roused, did not drift back to port with equal ease. Pettyr traced a faint smear on the glass with his thumb, and allowed himself a moment's reflection on the shape of chaos still unfolding beyond his lines of sight. Behind him, the doors opened with a soft groan. Margaery entered, casting a faint citrus scent across the room, the hem of her pale green gown whispering over the tiles. She set a folded parchment on his desk and came to stand beside him, her shoulder just brushing his. "The Maester of Whispers in Sunspear writes of sails on their horizon," she said, eyes tracking the distant rise of torchlight along the city wall. "He says they fly the colors of the Lords of the Stepstones, though he suspects they belong to other masters entirely. Bold ventures rarely sail under true flags," Pettyr replied. "Whoever they are, They will pause at the stepstones before daring the gullet. We have time to greet them properly. Time is seldom the benevolent friend we imagine, she murmured. There are other rumors as well. Celcio captains boast in taverns of payment in freshly minted stag lions, coin that bears our sigil twined with the crown. Someone mints counterfeits by the thousands. Bendon sucks. Petyr turned from the window at last, studying her face in lamplight. 5 years had sculpted subtler angles along her jaw and sharpened the quiet steel behind her smile. Where once she cloaked ambition in charms, she now wore it openly, as a jeweler might display a flawless emerald. Counterfeiting is the flattery of weak minds, he said. Their coin will devalue itself long before it sours faith in ours. We shall simply buy back the fakes at half value in the markets, melt them down, and remit pure silver bars to Bravos. The broken trades will fall upon the forger's shoulders, and our coffers will swell besides. Then so. Margaery watched him, pupils reflecting thin strands of firelight. You make it sound effortless. It is not, he admitted. Yet the mathematics of trust are simpler than they seem. Feed a populace, shield its children, and allow its merchants to enrich themselves. They will forgive 1,000 counterfeiters. Counterfeiters. He gestured to the parchment on the desk. What news rides inside that letter? A raven from Winterfell, she answered. Lady Alice Karstark sends thanks for the seed grain we dispatched. Snow still lingers on their furrows, but they planted the first summer oats 3 days ago. Stark bannermen are singing that the crown has done more for them in these 5 seasons than in the century since Aegon's conquest. Petyr arched a brow. High praise, and conveniently timed. The North remembers kindness nearly as long as it remembers betrayal. He picked up the parchment, skimming neat lines of northern courtesy. Did she address the rumors of wildling raids along the Shivering Sea? Only illusions, Margaery said. But she mentioned ships sighted beyond Skagos. Hardly honest fishermen. Petyr tapped the paper. An opportunity. If we dispatch a modest fleet of the new galleys, escorted by our own Northmen along the decks, we root out the raiders, and the holdfasts will call us saviors. He set the letter down and moved to pour wine. Your husband may yet earn a wolf's howl of approval. We will both earn it, she corrected, accepting a cup. She sipped, then glanced toward the black sky beyond the casement. There is still the matter of the faith militant. Their numbers grow each moon. They say a new high septon walks barefoot from hovels to halls, blessing children in your name. Then one? The faith loves miracles, Petyr said, swirling his wine. Give them bread, they taste divinity. Give them clean water, they proclaim prophecy. Margaery's gaze sharpened. But prophecies are double-edged. The wrong whisper in the wrong ear in our tapestry unravels before the shuttle returns. Petyr set his cup aside and closed the distance between them. Then we weave faster. He brushed a strand of hair from her brow with unexpected tenderness. You fret. Tell me why. Then? She inhaled, steadying. Because peace hums so quietly, I fear it will shatter beneath the smallest dissonant note. Her eyes roamed to the map-strewn desk. We have balanced north and south, coin and bread, lion and rose. Yet dragons still sleep across the sea, and krakens stir in deep currents. How long before a beast rises that will not bend to our songs? Petyr exhaled softly. If such a beast comes, we will greet it not with shields, but with mirrors, showing it what it wishes to see until its own reflection consumes it. He offered her his arm. Come. Let us dine. We have guests tonight. 2 Bravosi captains, a spice prince from Volantis, and the new master of the city watch. They must leave believing harmony reigns. Then so. She nodded, slipping her hand into the crook of his elbow. Together they departed, the door closing on lamplight and letters. Those silent conspirators that would, by dawn, travel farther than any soldier's horse could gallop. Steel rang in the training yard below the maiden vault the following morning. Tommen Baratheon, now 15th, cheeks still round though chin promising a king's sturdiness, parried a thrust from Sir Hyle Hunt, sweat darkening his auburn curls. The courtyard smelled of crushed mint underfoot. An herb planted in abundance, so exercise would release its crisp scent. A small innovation Margaery introduced, and the squires adored it. Petyr watched from a shaded archway, arms folded, while Sir Garland Tyrell assessed footwork a few paces away. The king ducked a riposte, rolled his shoulder, and delivered a quick, low feint. Hyle stumbled, surprised, and the onlookers murmured approval. When the exercise ended, Tommen grinned, wiping his brow. He removed his helm and strode toward Petyr. "Did you see that last pass?" he asked, eagerness layering his voice. "Sir Hyle always watches my sword arm. I feinted beside his boot, just as you suggested." Petyr smiled. "A thrust unseen is worth 10 parries witnessed." Tommen flushed with pride. He glanced toward Garland. "Sir Garland says I'm strong enough to joust in the spring tourney." Petyr noted the lad's height. Still modest. But the shoulders now had breadth, so long as your mount is gentle and your armor light. Queens and small folk alike prefer their kings upright. Tommen laughed. "My mother would faint. She still calls me Hare Cub." "That is a mother's right," Petyr answered. Though both knew Cersei's doting had curdled into brooding watchfulness. She spent most days in the Tower of the Hand's lost library, poring over musty tomes on wildfire and ancient Valyrian blood bindings, matters Tommen preferred to ignore. Sir Garland approached, saluted. "Sire, your form improves apace. I'd wager a stag against a dragon you'll break more lances than some grown knights within a year." "Men are whiny." Tommen beamed. "I'll hold you to that, Sir Garland." Petyr let the moment linger, then gestured the king aside to a stone bench. "There is news from the Stepstones," he said softly. "Corsairs flying false kraken banners threaten our trade lanes. I propose we dispatch the Crown's fleet, under Admiral Redwyne, to police those waters." Tommen's brows knit. "Will it mean war?" "A show of force," Petyr replied. "They are little more than pirates. Driving them off will prove simpler than your last spar. Yet allowing them to plunder our merchants would signal weakness." "Then," Tommen considered, "then send the fleet. But instruct Redwyne, treat prisoners fairly. I will not have tales of cruelties tarnish our crest." Petyr inclined his head. "Mercy is a strong oar, your grace. I will pen the orders." He stood. "And when you sit the next council, I will ensure the matter is praised as your decision alone." The king's lips curved, a man's smile, not a boy's. "Thank you, Lord Petyr." As Tommen returned to his squires, Petyr felt a subtle ripple of satisfaction. The lad's confidence grew each month, yet still, it sprouted in soil Petyr had tilled. Guiding a child king was like shaping molten glass. Steady pressure, patient heat, and an artist's restraint until the vessel cooled hard enough to hold wine without spilling. Far to the west, 3 kraken-prowed longships cut across a pewter sea beneath tattered gray sails. At their helm brooded Carl Quicktongue, once an obscure sell-sail, now captain and thrall to coins minted in the image of a lion's head and bird rose bloom. He had never seen the coin's issuer. His contract was inked by a mute Bravosi broker, but gold weighed the same no matter whose sigil graced it. Quicktongue spat brine into the wind as black clouds gathered. Somewhere beyond that horizon lay the Straits of Tarth, ripe waters where fat galleys crawled like pregnant crabs. He glanced at his quartermaster. 5 days to the straits, he growled. "Keep the men sober till then. I want holds empty for captured cargo, not belching beer kegs." "Beow." The quartermaster nodded. Yet in his cabin below, Quicktongue kept a second ledger. A book whose cipher named a different lord, Euron Greyjoy. The Crow's Eye had promised islands of silk and satin, should the corsairs sow enough havoc that the royal fleet would scatter thin as spiderwebs across the narrow sea. 2 masters, Quicktongue mused, but only one could pay forever. He sniffed the storm-heavy air and wondered which master might still stand when the lightning cleared. 3 days later, Petyr's Raven reached Old Town, where Admiral Redwyne held court aboard the towering Merling's whale. The admiral's sons, chorused by shipwright whistles, prepared 20 war galleys, the swiftest in the Reach. Orders were crisp. Escort merchant cogs to the stepstones, sink any vessel bearing kraken or midnight squid flags, and take prisoners to Driftmark for trial. A second scroll, waxed in secret, commanded Redwine to place a trusted son on each captured ship. Petyr would not leave potential assets unplucked. As hulls were caulked and oarsmen gathered, ravens flew in opposite directions. One to Sunspear, promising trade concessions for Dornish oranges if their swift sand sails scouted the summer sea. Another to a quiet tower in Tarth, instructing Selwyn Tarth to lift beacon fires on his cliffs should ironborn sails appear. In this dance, information would be the first blade drawn, and Petyr intended to wield it before any cutlass flashed. In the Red Keep, Margaery convened a luncheon for the city's guild mistresses and female apothecaries, a subtle broadening of support beyond lords and septons. They dined on grilled river trout and saffron rice in the Maiden Vault gardens. Ivy-laced trellises cast dappled shade as the Queen Regent spoke of a new infirmary wing at the Poor Sisters Hospice, staffed and financed by the guilds themselves under royal charter. A stout brewer named Valine Hopswell raised a tankard. "Your Grace provides the cask, we'll fill it with sweet ale," she declared, drawing laughter. Yet when Margaery gently guided the talk toward grain shipments and price ceilings, the women offered serious counsel. Valine proposed standardized grain weights to thwart unscrupulous millers. An apothecary from Fleabottom suggested a levy on imported sweetlaff to fund plague wards. By feast's end, Margaery had secured not merely coin but civic pride. She wrote each guild mistress into a public proclamation praising their foresight. Small folk soon spoke of the Maiden's Infirmary, though quietly they called it Margaery's Mercy. Later that evening she joined Petyr in his solar, handing him the day's minutes neatly summarized. He scanned them, impressed. "You see," she said, easing onto a cushioned window bench. "A few flagons of ale and a bit of honest listening purchases loyalty no amount of gold might buy." Petyr sat opposite. "In this city loyalty is a currency, like any other. Yet your market fetches higher prices than mine these days." He poured tea for them both. "Do you trust these guild mistresses will keep faith if warships darken the horizon?" "They will if their children eat," she replied. "And if they believe the next sunrise still brings hope." He considered that. Hope is the most volatile of investments, yet the richest. She sipped tea. "You deal in fear and favors. See how easily they shift in fickle winds. But hope feeds on itself once seated." Petyr tapped a finger on his knee, the gesture that always preceded strategic turnings. "Perhaps then we cultivate larger fields." He leaned forward. "Would you consider a progress? An extended journey through the realm? We travel to Sunspear, White Harbor, eventually across the narrow sea to Braavost. We present a united face, blessing villages, inspecting granaries, breaking bread in longhouses. The people will touch their rulers, and hope will root deeper." "Then so." Margaery's eyes sparked. "A queenly progress." She breathed, vision already stretching. "The first since the days of Alisanne and Jaehaerys." He said. "A pilgrimage of peace." Meanwhile, Tommen will hold court, advised by his council. He will feel the stir of independence while still guided by scripts we pen in advance. "Cersei will object," she warned. "Cersei objects to the spin of the sun. She will protest, then stall in her tower rereading prophecies." He poured an extra splash of tea. "Tywin remains our greater concern. He masks patience as iron, but he calculates our every step." "Invite him to join the progress," Margaery suggested suddenly. "Flatter him. Call it the Lion's Escort of Rose and Bird. He will send his best men, and we will know exactly where they are." Petyr's grin curved slow. "Ill bloom indeed." He raised his cup. "To hopeful fields, my lady." "To harvests of peace," she replied, and their ceramics kissed. At dawn the following week, ravens cried across the capital as proclamations spread. King Tommen, with the blessing of his small council, announced a realm-wide progress led by Queen Regent Margaery and Lord Protector Petyr Baelish. The purpose? To nurture trade, succor famine-struck hamlets, and strengthen the Seven Kingdoms' unity. Tywin Lannister would accompany with a contingent of 200 knights, and the Queen Mother would serve as temporary Lady Regnant of the Crown Lands, restricted to civil duties. Cersei shattered a goblet upon hearing. Tywin made no protest, but spent the night drafting meticulous ledgers of supply for each stage of travel. If the road must be taken, it would be taken on Lannister terms. Preparations consumed a fortnight. Caravans loaded with fine vellum, healing herbs, and barrels of honeyed wine assembled outside the Dragon Gate. Singers readied ballads, septons readied blessings. Blacksmiths forged new wheel rims for the Queen's carriage, while stable hands brushed palfreys until their coats gleamed. On the eve of departure, Petyr met Tommen in the training yard again, this time gifting him a slim volume bound in indigo leather. "Your Grace," he said, placing the book in the king's hands, "this is the Decree Codex of Beller the Blessed. Study it during our absence. Mark how a pious king balanced mercy and law. When I return, we will discuss every statute." Tommen traced the title with a thumb. "I will read it twice, and I shall hold court each week as we agreed." "Very good," Petyr said. "Remember, justice is swift, but wisdom is sure. Delay a judgment if your heart wavers." "Nan?" Tommen nodded solemnly. "Return quickly, Lord Petyr. Kings still need their teachers." Petyr bowed deeper than rank required. "And teachers are honored by diligent pupils." Dawn broke, and hooves drummed the cobbles as the progress set forth. Banners of lion, rose, and mockingbird streamed together in the breeze. Crowds thronged the street of steel to toss garlands. Bakers pitched pies into the air. Septus sprinkled holy water. Petyr rode a dappled gray courser beside Margaery, who sat astride a white palfrey adorned with green ribbons. Behind them marched Tywin in scarlet armor that glimmered like fresh blood. Just outside the city walls, Petyr looked back. On the parapets, Cersei watched. Unreadable. In her hands she cradled a folded parchment. Rumor whispered it was a prophecy penned by Maggie the Frog. The last lines redrafted again and again, as if rewriting fate. Petyr gave her a small, courteous nod. She did not acknowledge it. The column wound south along the Roserad. Early summer painted the fields in tawny gold, and the sun climbed with gentle mercy. Along hedgerows, small folk bowed. At the first village, Sherer Post, the queen dismounted to bless a new well. Margaery knelt beside a wizened midwife, helping lift the first bucket so children could drink. Petyr oversaw the signing of a charter gifting lumber for a schoolhouse roof. Tywin counted the sacks of flour dispensed from royal wagons, his face impassive. They traveled thus, day upon day. Through orchards where bees droned over heavy plums, across rivers bridged by stone arches older than memory, into market towns buzzing with mummers and spice sellers. Everywhere Margaery met petitioners, dispensing coins and smiles. Everywhere Petyr gathered names, secrets, grudges. Tywin's knights patrolled the perimeters, warding bandits who might test the entourage's mettle, though few dared approach so many steel-clad riders. At Maidenpool, they found the harbor choked with driftwood from a recent tempest. Petyr directed guild carpenters to salvage the timber for scaffolding repairs on the Storm Dancer lighthouse. In return, the Port Reeve pledged a tithe of future tolls to crown coffers. Tywin agreed, on condition the tithe flow through Lannisport's counting houses en route. Petyr consented, happy to let the Lion guard one stream while he diverted two others elsewhere. Margaery spent evenings in the town sept, singing gentle hymns that echoed down salt-slick corridors. Old men wept at her voice. Petyr watched from shadowed pews, notebook in lap, cataloging the congregants. Which fishermen's cooperatives might supply salted cod? Which wheelwright guild could repair wagons in half the usual time? Even devotion had its inventories. North of 9 Stars, now half rebuilt since the war, Tywin scouts captured 3 Ironborn deserters lurking near a burnt holdfast. Interrogated beneath an oak's broad limbs, They confessed Quick-Tongue's fleet hunted merchantmen under false banners. Tywin relayed the intelligence to Baelish. Petyr dispatched a raven to Admiral Redwine with a coded message. Blunt the tongue swiftly. At night, campfires flickered across hillocks. Petyr shared quiet wine with Margaery beneath a silken pavilion. Tywin held council in his red tent. Diagrams of supply lines sprawled before him. And on the outskirts, a hooded figure. One of Petyr's eyes, that small network of spies embedded amid the host, counted crossbow bolts, noting shortages traceable to a quartermaster bribed by Cersei's envoys. Petyr confronted the man privately, offered two choices: loyalty or exile -1 hand. The man chose loyalty, and Petyr's new quartermaster assumed duty before dawn. Through each calmly handled crisis, Tywin observed Baelish's methods. Precise, surgical, unrelenting. Yet Tywin also saw how small folk flocked to Margaery's campfires to share songs, their faith deepening in ways coin could not quantify. The old lion, seated by his brazier one evening, muttered to Kevan, who rode among his knights, "The realm grows vine and thorn around these two. If uprooted, half the land may bleed." Kevan only shrugged. "Then perhaps let the garden grow, brother. Gardens can be pruned more gently than battlefields salted." Tywin said nothing, but his gaze roamed the dark horizon where silent tents bore banners, not of Lannister crimson, but rosebud silvered green. In the stepstones, Quick-Tongue's raiders struck a Pentoshi cog at dawn. They expected a slow, flailing prize. Instead, 3 swift-reach galleys broke the horizon, sails fat with a sudden gust. Merling's whale led the charge. Siga scorpions on her prow spat iron bolts that smashed the Kraken figurehead clean off Quick-Tongue's flagship. D.O. In the cramped straits, the pirate ships could not turn. Boarding hooks flew. Oaken hulls collided. By sunset, ironborn survivors floundered in red-tinged water. Admiral Redwine's men hauled Quick-Tongue to the deck, chains clinking. The admiral inspected a purse of strange coins on the pirate's belt. Stag lions of recent mint. He pocketed them for Baelish's eyes. Then he signed the parchment, ordering the survivors transported to Driftmark for trial, and the captured sails burned without ceremony. When ravens carried the victory east, Quick-Tongue's real employer read the news with swings of mood. Euron Greyjoy's lip curled first with wrath, then with perverse amusement. He flicked one of the stolen stag lion coins into a brazier and watched it melt like wax. "A clever bird has clipped my tongue," he mused, voice echoing across the battered deck of silence. "Very well. I shall grow a new one and swallow his garden whole." He snapped his fingers. Silence's dusky crew rolled a map across barrels of sour wine. Euron's long finger traced a route, not to the stepstones, but to a distant smudge beyond the summer sea. Korth, and beyond it, slave reports awash in rumors of dragonfire. "Set the prow south," he commanded. "Let the roses bloom in peace. We hunt for fire." Then, months later, Petyr's progress neared its pinnacle. The Isle of Faces, where the gnarl kings of the Riverlands had not welcomed a crown since before the Dance of Dragons. The island's weirwood grove was sacred. Even hardened riverlords whispered of green dreams that haunted its mists. Petyr arranged a simple ceremony, gift-bearing, prayers for harvest, and a council of smallfolk leaders. They arrived in pale morning light, barges ferrying the entourage across still water. Fog curled around ancient white trunks, whose red leaves rustled like sighs. Septons refused to step ashore, muttering of old gods. Margaery kissed a branch and walked barefoot along moss banks, all diplomatic grace carried in silent reverence. Deep within the grove, an aged green man, face tattooed in spirals, greeted them. Petyr offered him a satchel of seeds bred in experimental gardens near Highgarden, grain that sprouted in half the usual days. The green man accepted with solemn nod. He led them to a weathered stone where previous monarchs had carved oaths. Tommen's absent, Petyr knelt and etched the king's promise that the isle would remain forever untouched by axes, its waters guarded by crown and riverlord alike. The green man pressed a hand to Baelish's forehead. When it lifted, A smear of leaf blood marked his skin. Anointing of the old gods. For an instant, Petyr felt a prickling behind his eyes, as though unseen roots probed his memories, measuring ambition. He blinked, and the sensation fled, leaving only cool air. Margaery later asked what he felt. He paused, then said, So I glimpsed my own footsteps on paths not yet trodden. Did they lead to thrones? She asked. He shook his head. To mirrors, and beyond them, darkness. She rested a hand on his. Then we light lanterns as we go. They returned at last to King's Landing, banners dusty, horses bone-tired, but spirits high. Bread prices had stabilized. Harbor tolls brimmed. Sermons praised a worldly queen's mercy and a cunning lord's vigilance. Tommen, flush with fresh confidence, greeted them in the throne room, flanked by a sworn brotherhood of newly knighted squires. Petyr bowed, presenting 3 pirate flags captured at the stepstones. The court cheered as Tommen declared a feast. Wine flowed, and minstrels sang of the Isle of Faces pact. Cersei, clad in mourning black, though none had died, watched from a gallery, fingers white on the rail. That night, Petyr lay awake in his chamber, the city's distant rumble slicing the stillness. Margaery slept softly beside him. He turned to the window, inhaling humid air, and wondered at the disquiet churning in his heart. Victory tasted bittersweet when served too perfectly. Perhaps some instinct warned that equilibrium can invite its opposite with equal force. As moonlight etched thin bars across the tiles, a soft tap sounded at the door. An eye slipped inside, hood lowered. He knelt, offering a scroll sealed with a stylized 3-headed dragon in black ink. Petyr's pulse ticked. He slit the seal. The scroll bore 8 words. I would parley. Meereen is not so far. Then no signature, no further flourish. But Petyr recognized the penstrokes. Careful Valyrian script, rumored to grace the war councils of a queen across the sea. Dragons, it seemed, were done sleeping. Petyr folded the parchment, eyes sliding to Margaery's sleeping form. He set it on the table, then dipped a quill in ink that shimmered darkly. Every game renews its pieces, he whispered to the silence. Then let new pieces come. His quill scratched until dawn bled across the city, scripting letters to Braavos, to Volantis, to Pentos. Each line reshaped futures before they arrived, weaving threads that might strangle dragons, or guide them. At sunrise he rose, donned his cloak, and went to wake the Queen Regent. For hope may feed a realm, but ambition ever seeks a storm on which to ride, and Petyr Baelish had never feared the lightning. K1. The autumn sun had not yet crested the rooftops of the city when Petyr Baelish re-entered the Tower of the Hand, with the dragon-sealed scroll burning quietly in his breast pocket. Chill air clung to the corridors. Even the braziers seemed reluctant to stir. Ghostlights under wall tapestries painted everything in half-color, as though the Red Keep itself were still deciding whether to wait. He paused before the window that overlooked the Blackwater. Calm at this hour save for gulls wheeling in search of fishermen's scraps, and pictured ships with black sails trimmed in gold cutting across that mirror of water. Unfurling banners whose wyvern shapes had not flown in these channels for a century and a half. Meereen is not so far. 8 words, stark as winter white, yet each dripped molten metal. If the Mother of Dragons reached for the realm, she would not come as queen seeking coronation alone. She would bring living fire. Fire devoured order as quickly as paper burned. Petyr had built order out of dust, promises, and the delicate mortar of hope. What would be left when dragons exhaled? He pressed his finger to the scroll's wax seal, feeling the ridges of that 3-headed sigil. A year ago, he might have torn the letter apart, shipped assassins east, bribed slavers to sabotage the so-called liberator of chains. Now, though, the calculus was different. He wielded the hearts of small folk, the purse strings of guilds, the whispers of septons. He guided a king and stood beside a queen whose brilliance lit every hall she entered. Fire could destroy, yes, but properly harnessed, It could refine ore, temper steel, draw eyes skyward in awe. He heard soft slippers approaching. Margaery emerged from the stairwell, hair bundled in a gold net, a robe of pale ivory cinched loosely at her waist. She studied his face and immediately saw the unusual tension. "Is it the pirate remnants?" she asked. "Or the faith militant again? I heard chants near Cobbler's Square after sunset, something of a new high septon denouncing vanity." "Then she..." Petyr lifted the scroll. "Neither. We have been invited to a parley. Across the sea." She raised a brow. "A parley? From whom?" "From the queen who styles herself Stormborn." Margaery stilled. Morning glow touched her cheekbones, but color drained slightly all the same. "Daenerys Targaryen. The dragons are real? Rumor gave us 3. Spies who fled Astapor whispered that 1 is gray as dusk and 2 are darker than moonless night. Wingspan broad enough to drape a ship mast. They do more than breathe fire. They herd armies of freedmen. Maraine's walls hold only while she wills it. Menaw. Yet she writes to you rather than storming Westeros with fire and blood." Margaery's eyes sharpened. She wants allies, or to measure her opponents. Petyr gestured to the corridor. They began a slow walk. "If she sails..." "She'll face storms, Ironborn, and the Red Wine Fleet. She would test the water first. But she sends the letter to me, not Tywin, not Cersei, not the king. The bird knows which branch bends without snapping." Margaery clasped her hands behind her. What does she actually want? Likely legitimacy, supply lanes, knowledge of our garrisons. She may ask for hostages, a token prince, a hostage lion cub, or perhaps she seeks merely to promise. "Stand aside, and I shall spare your fields." "Fields already sown with hope," Margaery said. "We cannot barter those away." "Nor must we," Petyr replied. "There is always a path between submission and defiance. Sometimes, that path is simply conversation. If a dragon queen can be convinced her throne waits for her peacefully, she may come peacefully. And if she cannot be convinced, at least we will know her mind sooner than our rivals." "Then..." Margaery paced a step ahead, then turned, robe swirling. "Would we travel to her? Cross the narrow sea? A risky voyage. Spies may intercept us. Storms may drown us. And Tywin would move in our absence. Then we draw her here." Margaery tapped her chin thoughtfully. "Offer her guest right on Dragonstone. Historic seat of her house, but garrisoned now by crown forces. An island, defendable, yet removed from the heart of the capital. She could land a small retinue, not an army." Petyr's smile flickered. "You anticipate me." "Exactly. Invite her to Dragonstone under truce. Present ourselves as mediators between her claim and Tommen's. Let her see the realm stable, the people fed. A conquering queen who finds no famine, no tyranny, may temper her fire. Or she may view us as liars, painting false peace." Margaery cautioned. "We must accompany truth with spectacle. Show her orphanages, new roads, free debtors. Show her you and I are architects of respite, not oppression. Then, we should also assure her of succession," Petyr murmured. "Propose a marriage alliance, perhaps?" Margaery's brow crept up. "Between whom?" "Between her and Tommen, perhaps." She'd balk at a child groom. But betrothals may be long. Or between her and a Tyrell cousin. Forging reach support. Many petals to arrange. Dangerous petals. She may pluck them right off the stem. Indeed. Petyr stopped near an arched window overlooking the training yard, now empty, except for a squire sweeping sand. "Then we treat the proposal as contingency, not ultimatum. Meanwhile, we gather every parchment on dragons' habits, on Valyrian customs, on wildfire caches Tywin never managed to exhaust. Knowledge is armor. Margaery's face softened slightly. And if she proves a queen who truly frees chains, then we may choose chains to cast away ourselves, he admitted. Power is not a throne but the ability to rise when worlds tilt. She stepped close, resting her hand on his arm. We tilt them together. His hand covered hers. For an instant, the future felt malleable, like wax warmed by dawn. Sir Marwyn of the White Harbor Ravens, librarian, mage rumored, and rarely sober, arrived in the capital 2 days later, summoned by Cypher. He wore a watch cloak dyed toxic green and carried a carved dragonglass rod as a walking stick. In the hidden library below the Maester's tower, Petyr and Margaery met him amid rows of dusty scrolls. The candlelight bounced off Marwyn's iron chain links, each blackened bead representing forbidden lore. Petyr poured a cup of sweet arbor red. You studied Valyrian histories. Do dragons answer to blood magics? Marwyn laughed, a sound like gravel. Dragons answer to hunger and fear. Blood magic only pretends to hold their leash. He ran his thumb along a parchment depicting Aegon atop Balerion. But treatises claim scions of the Dragonlords shared songs, words instilled in hatchlings' ears. Dragons grew accustomed to the cadence and obeyed. Margaery leaned in. So a queen of dragons may command only those reared at her hearth? Likely, Marwyn said. Yet full-grown beasts recall the blood scent of their rider. If she falls, they may rage uncontrolled. In war, that unpredictability is weapon and risk. Petyr folded his arms. Can wildfire impede them? Marwyn's eyes glittered. Wildfire is infant spit compared to a dragon's throat. But enough wildfire along a city's roofs could scare one away, briefly. Briefly is enough, Petyr murmured. A distraction buys negotiation. Marwyn smirked. You scheme to lull a hurricane with paper walls. Admirable folly. Margaery ignored the barb. Could we hatch our own eggs? The crown holds none. But whispers speak of stone eggs beneath the crypts of Winterfell, another rumored beneath Storm's End. Crack shells, perhaps. Marwyn scoffed. Eggs petrify after centuries. Shatter one, and you will find only dusty jewels. Men? Still, whispers draw followers, Petyr said. If the common folk believe we may birth a dragon, they may resist kneeling to hers. Marwyn drained his cup. Beliefs shape wars more than swords. Peddle your legends wisely. Thank you. Petyr tilted his head. One last request. Compile every record you own on Valyrian treaties. I need to craft terms Daenerys Targaryen cannot dismiss without appearing cruel. Cruelty never burdened Targaryens, Marwyn muttered. But he nodded, shoving scrolls into a satchel. I will deliver within a fortnight, if my ship avoids krakens and golden lions. Petyr produced a jade token stamped with his mockingbird. Present this at any crown gate. Doors will open. Purses will unstitch. Marwyn pocketed the token, cloak swirling. May the gods drown all kings, he chuckled, and slipped out between shelves. Meanwhile, in Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister sat at his massive gold-inlaid desk, reviewing an intercepted raven from the Free Cities that referenced Dragonstone parley. He tapped a finger on the Lion's Road route, marked with crimson pins, and contemplated the possibility that Petyr Baelish would soon treat with dragons before the hand could muster a plan. Kevin stood nearby. We cannot allow Baelish to present himself as sole envoy of the realm, he said. If Targaryen eyes behold only rose and bird, the lion may be listed among tyrants to be toppled. Tywin's jaw flexed. The lion remains the heart of this kingdom. I will not be painted as relic. Then ride to Dragonstone yourself, Kevin urged. Stand beside Baelish, show unity. Tywin's gaze hardened. Unity, under his script? He pushed back, rising. The Iron Throne belongs to my blood. If dragons approach, they must treat with lion first. So send your voice before theirs carries, Kevin said. Name a Lannister envoy. Myself, perhaps. Or Sir Jaime, though he remains in the Kingsguard. Tywin paced to a window carved into the cliff face, sea spray glittering on the glass. Jaime cannot abandon Tommen in the capital. You will go, brother, with a cohort of rock-reliable knights. Offer defense of Dragonstone's harbor, and remind the Targaryen girl who kept her ancestors' seat intact. Kevan bowed. And if Baelish objects? Outmaneuver him. They may parley together, but the Lion's warships supply the island. He will dance to our drums, whether he hears them or not. Tywin returned to his desk, quill slicing parchment, naming Kevan special ambassador to Dragonstone. Beneath the words he drew a small sigil. A lion's paw gripping a broken chain. The meaning was his alone. From the docks of King's Landing, Ravenfeather's sails blossomed as Petir's personal galley, the Laughing Shadow ready to depart. Castle-forged anchors clanked. Hawsers creaked. The crew comprised Vale mariners sworn by coin and secrets. Atop the aft castle stood Sir Harlan Tully, a distant cousin wearing mail dyed in Tyrell green. Symbolism over bloodline. Subtle strokes in Baelish's brush. On the morning of departure, Margaery walked the pier with Tommen at her side. The king wore a doublet stitched with golden rosettes and carried a leather folder of sealed decrees to implement while his regent was abroad. "You will preside over small council in my absence," Margaery said gently. "Remember the bread levy is due in 10 days. Ensure the grain tunnels remain guarded." Tommen nodded earnest. "I will, and I'll continue my sparring." Sir Garland promised to oversee morning drills. Petyr clasped the lad's shoulder. "Your grace, every raven I send will carry tasks. Fulfill them, and the realm will see a king as steady as his counsel." "Ben, I will not disappoint," Tommen said. Though a flicker of worry betrayed him, he looked toward the galley's black hull, then back to Margaery. "Return safely." She kissed his forehead. "The mother will guide us." Cersei stood farther down the pier, arms folded tight, lion-headed clasp glinting on her cloak. She offered no words, only a brittle stare that shifted from Margaery to Petyr and back. When the gangplank was hauled, Petyr raised his hand in courtly salute. Cersei's cloak rippled in the morning wind. Then she turned and vanished into the crowd. Margaery exhaled as the Laughing Shadow slid into open water. "She hates me more each dawn." "Hate is a strong glue," Petyr said. "It binds her to predictable courses." Margaery watched the receding docks until the city's walls merged with the horizon. "Let us hope dragons prove equally predictable." Petyr merely smiled, though privately he doubted it. Sailing days folded into each other. The Laughing Shadow hugged the coast, darting into coves by night. In Petyr's cabin, walls hung with veiled tapestry of falcon and moon, he studied charts of Dragonstone's currents. Margaery joined him at dusk, candlelight flickering between them. "I drafted terms," she said, setting a parchment. "We recognize her as Princess of Dragonstone but not Queen, in exchange for her recognition of Tommen as King of the Andals. She gains title Lady Protector of the Narrow Sea, a ceremonial post, plus tariff rights on silk imports." Petyr scanned the lines. "Generous." "She might accept if her horizon extends only to coin." Margaery tilted her head. "If she loves justice." "She may accept shared stewardship. We propose an alliance to end slavery across the Summer Sea, offering crown charters to any freedman navies that patrol pirate waters. She calls herself Breaker of Chains. Let her see we too break chains." "Smart." Petyr circled clauses about marriage. No direct betrothal, but a note that inter-kingdom union may be considered after Tommen's majority. "We leave possibility open." "Possibility is a door," Margaery said. "Open enough that she need not burn it." Petyr folded the parchment. "If she arrives breathing flame, words may char. Then we speak quickly." Margaery met his eyes. "Promise me the first arrow will not be ours." He traced her knuckles with his thumb. "I promise." A knock interrupted. Harlan Tully entered. "My lord." Sail on horizon. Red wines by the look. They fly Lannister colors. Petyr rose. Ambassador Kevan arrived sooner than expected. They climbed to the quarterdeck. 2 galleys approached. Hulls crimson trimmed. Golden lions flapped above gilded prows. Petyr ordered flags raised. Mockingbird quartered with rose. Trumpets exchanged notes. Hours later, The vessels moored side by side. Kevan Lannister boarded, armor polished, beard streaked silver. He greeted Pettyr with a cordial clasp. "Lord Baelish, your voyage seems popular." Pettyr smiled. "Unity of Crown commands many escorts." "Indeed." Kevan's gaze lingered on Margaery. He bowed. "Your Grace." She curtsied. "I trust Casterly Rock fares well." Kevan's expression betrayed nothing. "The rock endures. I bear letters from the hand clarifying terms of any parley. Dragons or not, King Tommen's sovereignty is non-negotiable." Pettyr accepted the sealed packet. "We intend no less." Night fell as crews shared wine across decks. Kevan briefed Pettyr under lantern glow. "Intelligence suggests Daenerys may sail sooner than rumored. She recently captured the Volantinese slave fleet, converting galleys into troop carriers. She preaches across the islands. The realm is hers by birthright." "Birthright is compelling," Pettyr murmured. "But arrival is harder than proclamation." "Do not underestimate her," Kevan warned. "She leads by example. Freedmen follow to repay justice, not coin." Pettyr nodded slowly. "Then we must appear just indeed." Margaery arrived with charts. "We turn east to Dragonstone at dawn. If the princess lands first, we greet her. If we arrive first, we prepare her welcome. Either way, the parley occurs on ground we control." Kevan agreed. Yet that night, he penned a separate report to Tywin, describing Baelish's calm, Margaery's influence, and the palpable loyalty of their crews. He sealed it with red wax, but no ravens flew. The sea held their secrets until harbor. Dragonstone rose from mists like a black talon, towers carved into dragon shapes, mouths agape in eternal roar. The laughing shadow glided through narrow channels, lined with jagged rocks. Smoke curled from vents. Volcanic breaths beneath the fortress foundations. War banners of the crown still flapped. Baratheon stag within a fiery heart, now replaced by Lion Guard banners. Yet on the watchtowers, new pennons snapped. Tyrell roses, Vale falcons, and the Lion of Lannister underlined by the Mockingbird's silver. A crucible of sigils, designed to show shared stewardship, none dominant. Pettyr allowed himself a smirk. Optics built peace more surely than treaties. Admiral Redwine greeted them in the outer bailey, bowing low. "No Targaryen sails sighted yet, my lords, my lady. But gulls grow restless. Change rides the wind." Pettyr inspected the docks. Barrels stacked with fresh water, smokehouses stocked with cured mutton. He ordered that half the stores be labeled for the Dragon Queen's retinue, a gesture of hospitality. Guards repainted courtyard columns overnight, erasing the crowned stag, replacing it with a neutral crown circled by 7-pointed stars, symbol of unity. Margaery, walking the ramparts, felt the ancient chill of the place. Black stone absorbing sunlight, radiating whispered memories of conquest. She placed her palm upon a weathered gargoyle's snout. "How many lives did you watch burn, little monster?" she whispered. The stone remained cold. Pettyr joined her. Below, smiths hammered. Above, gulls screeched. "We have a day, maybe two, before her sails appear. Enough time to stage comfort." "Comfort may seem a trap," Margaery cautioned. "A conquering queen expects suspicion. Then we complement suspicion with respect." Pettyr pointed. "I arranged her quarters in the Sea Dragon Tower. That jagged spire there, historically reserved for visiting Targaryens. Maids will leave fine Dornish citrus water, but no perfumed oils. She abhors ostentation, according to Essosi report." Margaery raised a brow. Ever the attentive host. Hosts earn gratitude. She turned to gaze over the bay. "If you were her, would you trust us?" He considered. "If I were her, I would test us. Perhaps demand immediate pledge of loyalty. Perhaps release dragons overhead to gauge our fear. Then we must not flinch. No." He took her hand. "But we must not challenge either." Courage disguised as calm. She squeezed back. "We have walked through many corridors, Pettyr. Dragons are merely corridors alight." He smiled at that. "And we carry lanterns. The following dawn broke amber across a steel-gray sea. From the eastern horizon, a line of sails materialized. Black, bearing a red, three-headed dragon. They moved in wedge formation. Swift and silent, drums beat a slow rhythm that carried across the water like distant thunder. Trumpets blew on Dragonstone. Garrison soldiers snapped to ready. Pettier stood at the seaward bastion, flanked by Kevin and Admiral Redwine. Margaery joined moments later, cloak whipping in salt wind. Dragons circled above the fleet, two shapes at first, then a third soared from cloud, wings enormous, trailing embers in its wake. The crowd along the parapet gasped. Some knelt instinctively. Pettier studied the beats of their wings, measuring distance, speed, range of flame. They were smaller than Valyrian by legend, but size mattered little when fire reigned. A horn sounded. 3 deep notes. Request for parley. Pettier signaled with lamp shutters. Accepted. Come ashore, under peace banners. A single longboat broke from the vanguard, oars dipping white foam. At its prow stood a young woman in dark riding leathers, hair pale laced back from her face. 2 unsullied rowed. Behind her sat a sly man with stained mustache. Dario Naharis, if whispers true, and an older knight cloaked in white and gold. Sir Barristan Selmy. Margaery's heart thudded. She is brave, boarding with so few. A message, Pettier replied. She trusts her dragons to guard. The boat reached the stone dock. Guards lowered a gangway. Daenerys stepped onto basalt carved like scales. The dragons settled upon parapets, wings rustling like sails furling. Their golden eyes tracked every soldier. Fear rippled, but discipline held. Pettier descended with Margaery at his right, Kevin on his left. He inclined his head. Princess Daenerys of House Targaryen, welcome to Dragonstone. Daenerys studied him. Then, Margaery. I am called Queen across the narrow sea, she said, accent soft yet laced with command. But I accept courtesy before quarrel. Margaery curtsied. I am Margaery of House Tyrell, Queen Regent. May your sailors find rest, and your dragons find warm perch. Then? Daenerys' violet eyes flicked to the towers. Ancient stones remember dragonfire. They carry my people's echo. Pettier gestured inland. We prepared quarters once used by Princess Rhaenys. A flicker passed her expression. Nostalgia or pain, he could not say. She nodded, waving Barristan forward. My captain will inspect first. Barristan bowed to Pettier. Old recognition from his Kingsguard years. Pettier returned polite nod. Kevin offered a lion-stiff greeting. Daenerys turned to Margaery. You speak in the council of the boy king. I serve until he comes of age. How old? 15. Daenerys' gaze softened slightly. A child. Steering a storm, Margaery answered evenly. Guided by hands devoted to peace. Daenerys' stare traveled over garrison banners. The rosebird crest mingled with lion and falcon. So many sigils, she murmured. Does the realm stand for one crown or many? Pettier interjected gently. We stand for a realm where houses cooperate, not dominate. Yet the Iron Throne seats one, she replied. For now, Margaery admitted. But even one seat may host many voices. Daenerys' mouth curved in faint amusement. We shall see which voices ring truest. Pettier extended his hand toward the fortress gate. Shall we begin discourse? She walked ahead, cloak trailing. Above, the dragons shifted but remained perched. Silent guardians. Barristan returned, confirming the quarters' satisfied security. Daenerys allowed a small nod. Inside the Sea Dragon Tower's council chamber, a vaulted room of dark columns shaped as serpents, they gathered around a circular stone table. Cushions were arranged. Hearths burned low, sea salt crackling. Pettier, Margaery, Kevin took one side. Daenerys, Barristan, and Dario the other. Pettier opened with careful warmth. We share a sea. Let us share intentions. Daenerys answered, resting hands upon the table. Intention. To reclaim the crown stolen from my family. Kevin leaned forward. The crown now rests on a boy's brow, innocent of usurpation. She regarded him coldly. Children of usurpers keep stolen toys. Margaery spoke before tension sharpened. Our realm prospers after long wars. We seek to avoid more blood. If you desire justice, we propose terms granting you titles, influence, and partnership, while preserving stability. End. Daenerys listened as Margaery outlined the charter. Princess of Dragonstone, Lady Protector of the Narrow Sea, abolitionist accord against slavers, invitations for her freedmen to settle unclaimed crown lands. She kept her expression neutral, only raising a brow at the suggestion of eventual marriage alliance. When the regent finished, Daenerys tapped the stone lightly. You would let me rule harbors and islands, yet not cities. You would send my children. She nodded to the dragons through a window, back across the sea when they stretched their wings. My people fled chains. You offer them farmland bound by taxes they scarcely understand. Mem sao. Taxes supporting schools and healers, Margaery said gently. And we propose freedmen councils to govern themselves. Daenerys' gaze softened, but Dario snorted. Councils will become pig troughs for local lords. Petyr spoke calmly. Hence our oversight. Breaker of chains may oversee the overseers. Transparency codified in law. Daenerys folded her arms. Law is fragile. Law tempered by mutual respect becomes iron, Petyr said. We ask for respect, not surrender. She considered, then glanced at Barristan. The old knight inclined his head slightly. Daenerys looked back. I will not accept second throne. But I will consider co-rule until a time when the boy is grown. Then the realm may choose. Through council of lords and small folk alike, which monarch leads. Margaery hesitated. A referendum. Call it what you like, Daenerys said. Let the people decide. When they witness justice, they choose justice. Kevin stiffened. The throne is no market stall. Daenerys' eyes flashed. It has been treated as such for generations. Bid after bid, blood after blood. I offer a vote instead of fire. Petyr steepled his fingers. A bold proposal. Implementation would demand years. Records, rolls, votes counted fairly. Years I have, she replied. Margaery exchanged a glance with Petyr. The notion could legitimize their reforms, expand hope, yet risk lion backlash. Petyr answered slowly. We must confer with King Tommen. Daenerys nodded once. I will remain here 3 days. After that, answers. She stood. Now, I would see the stables. My horses traveled far. Margaery rose as well. Allow me to escort. They left the chamber. Dario trailed, whistling a Braavosi tune. Kevin exhaled. Finally, Petyr remained seated, staring at the coiled dragon carved into the center of the table. A referendum. Unprecedented. And yet, enticing. He pictured ballots flowing through hallways. Small folk shouted passions. Houses courting votaries. Chaos, yes, but chaos he might sculpt. If he guided the narrative, if he placed rosebird scribes at every counting station, if he ensured bread surpluses in Tyrell warehouses, released on election eves, hope would favor the hand that fed it. But Tywin would never consent. Cersei even less. Could they be outmaneuvered? Perhaps. Tywin's knights garrisoned Dragonstone. Yet his pride chained his tactics. He might expect sabotage, violence. He would not expect a game of ballots. Petyr rose, striding to a narrow window. The larger dragon, Vagan, he recalled from spy tales, preened on a parapet, black scales shimmering. A sudden gust lifted its wings. The beast launched skyward, tail lashing. Soldiers below ducked instinctively. Petyr watched with measured awe. Fire and ballots together, power could not help but shift. He whispered, "Let the people speak then. We will translate." That evening Margaery returned to the chamber, cheeks flushed from cold sea wind after stables tour. She took a chair beside Petyr near a low brazier. "She is formidable," the Queen Regent said softly. But her compassion seems genuine. She spent nearly an hour with the stable hands, speaking high Valyrian lullabies to calm their nerves. Dender. Petyr nodded. She believes in her legend. Do we dismiss her plea for vote? Dismiss? No. Embrace, shape, refine. But first, we must secure Tommen's acceptance. Tommen will listen if we guide him, but Tywin will not. We needn't ask Tywin. We ask the king. Council votes. Kevin may oppose, but Garland and Pycelle may be swayed. If the measure passes, Hand must execute royal will. And if Tywin refuses, he breaks the law he upholds. Petyr's smile held thin iron. That tarnishes lion gold. Margaery rested elbows on her knees. I fear for Tommen if the realm fractures. We fracture it gently, Petyr reassured, like prizing a pearl from shell. She managed a half-smile. I will pen a letter describing the plan in words that soothe. Do so tonight. I will draft legal precedent citing Aegon's councils of lords during conquest. Their quills scratched until midnight, one weaving heartfelt appeals, the other forging frameworks. When parchment stacks cooled, Margaery stretched. Suppose the vote chooses Daenerys. Petyr looked up. Then we ensure the vote counts both hearts and ledgers. People who eat and prosper rarely replace cooks. Keep them fed, keep them safe. They will choose continuity. Unless dragons awe them. He rose, drawing her also. We shall awe them first with bread and peace. Dragons may curtsy. She searched his eyes. And if they do not, he brushed her cheek. Then we will have done all else to earn the realm's love. In that love we hide our sharpest sword. They embraced briefly amid candle shadows. Outside, the dragons circled the tower, silent silhouettes above moonlit surf. As though eavesdropping on mortal stratagems, they could scorch away in a breath. Yet for now they wheeled overhead like omens suspended by invisible threads, waiting to hear which stories would feed their flames.